I mean, you sit here and you look at it, and I keep telling people, well, I go to the bank, but when I said earlier about legislators, it's like real life doesn't insulate you, or being elected doesn't insulate you from real life problems and issues and mistakes, and screw-ups and bad judgments once you're in the legislature, but you're a public person, and all those things can be a pinata when those things happen to you the same way it can happen to you in real life. But the difference is the hypocrisy of these people. And I sit there and tell people now, I said, I just have operated in real life the same way I do down there in the legislature, in that when I need money, I go to the bank, okay? And if you're down there to the point that you're having to borrow money off friends and things like that, you don't need to be down there managing a $25 billion budget. And yet these people just continue to just say, and the media, they come out with enough that just throws a tidbit at that shows that, hey, we're trying to do something, but they're not digging. And that's why we've got the problem that we are. And these little stories are they're just minor things that's blowing up over the surface. And you sit there and think, I didn't know, or you could, we knew it was going on. It's been talked about. This news story wasn't anything new. They just finally had to report on something to actually make it seem like they had to do something. This has been going on for a while. But, Paul, here's the thing. Okay. I got a confession.
Okay.
All right, I got a confession. We've sit here at the farm or in business, and you buy something and you think, no interest loan. No, probably this, well, we know it's built in and all that, but it makes us feel better. So when this actually broke out, I thought, how do I get one of these? Now, this is very key that all three important parts are to this, because that's the way somehow these people have operated. I can't believe they have, but, I'm a cynic. Okay, it's a no payment, no interest, no obligation loan. Okay, it's all three things. So I thought, so when I saw Jim Hendren the other day, I asked him, I said, hey, Jim, you got any money you can loan? And unfortunately, I was told no. Okay, so
wow.
I did not. I'm just going to confess to the people out there that, I got weak, okay, and I thought, man, who doesn't want a no payment, no interest, no obligation loan? To me, that's like that trifecta of loans. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, it certainly is, and I just can't imagine why Senator Hendren thought that Jake Files was good enough to get that zero payment, zero interest, no obligation loan, but the great Senator Brian King wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know about great, but no, I was not. And think about this. At that point in time, this is why the media didn't do anything, and that the media will still never cover any of my Medicaid disclosure bills that I was saying something years ago. They won't. They just sit back and just don't. How many times did Roby Brock have Jeremy Hutchison on his show? Mm-hmm. Name one time he ever asked him any tough questions about what was going on, about what we knew has been going on for years down there.
Yeah,
okay? Nothing.
And there isn't anything. Yeah.
No, there's nothing, and they're just barely dig. But so Jim Hendren loans.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. We're so glad that you are with us. The phone number, 870-275-9799, if you want to contribute to the program today. Over as well at facebook.com/Conduit News or the YouTube channel. If you go to the YouTube channel, please please subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications if you feel so inclined. We have a good show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be checking in with the Patriots of X746, Mr. John Calvin Martin. Going to be talking about some upcoming events. We want to talk a little bit about this story kind of fell through the cracks. The Arkansas teacher pension chief, Mr. Hopkins, decided to leave his post and retire at the end of the year. Of course, this guy kind of embattled a little scandal a couple of months ago where there was the Arkansas Teacher Retirement Pension Fund, part of a lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit, and there was a Massachusetts judge in that lawsuit that was trying to sniff around and try to figure out what's going on, who actually introduced the Teacher Retirement Fund, George Hopkins, with the attorneys that led the case, and another law firm from Texas that was talking about all the time and money they spent in referring, in getting the law firm, the connection here. And then, of course, you look at the percentage of money that actually went, to some of these law firms. I don't know. There was a lot of questions. And, because we live in Arkansas, your corruption bell is just going ding, 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 ding. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Anyway, this made waves. You had State Representative, was it Mark Lowry? Who was it? Was it Mark Lowry or I think it was him who said that he needed to step down from this situation. And, of course, then you had other people that said, no, he doesn't need to step down. Well, now he's retiring at the end of the year. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, we're going to be talking with immigration expert Maria Espinoza from the Remembrance Project. The Remembrance Project is this basically trying to remember people who have been killed by illegal immigrants here in America, Americans who've been killed by illegal immigrants. So the concept there is pretty simple. This is something that could be preventable if we were to actually have an immigration system that makes sense. Essentially what happened is last week at Topeka, Kansas, Donald Trump was at a rally. You got the Secretary of State of Kansas, Chris Kobach, and Chris Kobach is running for governor. And he made an amazing connection that I think is lost on many of us when it comes to the fact that the terrorist from Saudi Arabia that perpetrated the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on this country were here legally but then overstayed and nobody did anything about it. A lot of people don't want to remember that fact, but Chris Kobach certainly brought it up, and we're going to talk to Maria Espinoza about that and other things coming up today on the program. Folks, the biggest story that you need to read today is from Breitbart.com. It's on the front page of Breitbart.com right now. Somebody within Google, according to Breitbart News, somebody within Google has leaked another document to Breitbart, and this time it's called The Good Censor. It's a briefing that admits that they are abandoning free speech for the sake of safety and civility. This is a bombshell report on the censorship going on with the Silicon Valley elites, different companies that are supposed to be different, supposed to be separate, but they share such a common dogmatic leftist ideology that they are now colluding with one another to make sure they censor opinions that they disagree with personally. Again, abandoning the concept of freedom of speech, which is what a lot of these Silicon Valley tech companies first sought out to do, was create environments where people could use their services and speak their minds. This is from Alum Bakari, and he writes, an internal company briefing produced by Google and leaked exclusively to Breitbart News argues that due to a variety of factors, including the election of President Trump, the American tradition of free speech on the internet is no longer viable. This should make the hair stand up on the back of your neck, folks, because when you understand the amount of power right now that these tech giants have, and they're coming to this conclusion. Now, Google is saying, this was just, this is not policy. Yeah, right. How many? We've already got a video, like the day after, the week after, the Friday after, whatever, the 2016 election, all these Google employees and all these Google executives crying and, well, I don't know if they were actually crying, but you know what I mean. They were complaining and, oh, my goodness, what are we going to do? They were so upset. It's very emotional because most of the time they form their opinions led by emotions. You know, your emotions can deceive you. Do you know this? I've been deceived by my emotions many times. Despite leaked video footage showing top executives declaring their intention to ensure the rise of Trump and the populist movement is just a blip in history, Google has repeatedly denied that the political bias of its employees filter into its products. But an 85-page briefing titled "The Good Censor," what kind of diabolical person entitles this briefing "The Good Censor"? This sounds like something out of a 1984, a George Orwell, or something out of an Ayn Rand book. This is ridiculous. The Good Censor admits that Google and other tech platforms now control the majority of online conversations and have undertaken a shift towards censorship in response to unwelcome political events around the world. Examples cited in the document include the 2016 election and the rise of Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, AfD, Alternative for Deutschland. Responding to the leak, an official Google source said the document should be considered internal research and not an official company position. How many times are they going to say something like that? They really, in order to believe Google in Silicon Valley at this point, you have to be an idiot and a moron. The briefing labels the ideal of unfettered free speech on the internet a utopian narrative that has been undermined by recent global events as well as bad behavior on the part of users. Okay, so because the Silicon Valley people, because their political opinions are not popular with everybody else, because not everybody's a computer genius, so they see the world a little differently, but essentially because they've lost, because their ideas are losing in the public arena, they've got to abandon the utopian narrative of free speech. Do you understand how groundbreaking this document is that's been leaked to Breitbart News? It acknowledges that major tech platforms, including Google, Facebook, and Twitter, initially promised free speech to consumers. Quote, this free speech ideal was instilled in the DNA of the Silicon Valley startups that now control the majority of our online conversations, says the document. And look at this. Scroll down here. This is from the, let's see, this free speech ideal was instilled. Yeah, this is a screenshot here from the document. You see it right there. All right, scrolling down. Let's keep up with this. Oh, man, this next graph is diabolical. This is diabolical right here. The briefing argues that Google, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter are caught between two incompatible positions. The unmediated marketplace of ideas versus well-ordered spaces for safety and civility. My goodness. Well-ordered safety. What is this guy, the Emperor from Star Wars? What are these people? Unmediated marketplace of ideas. You mean freedom versus totalitarian control. Well-ordered spaces for civility and safety. Look at this graph. This graph is diabolical. Look at this. But tech firms have gradually shifted away from unmediated free speech and towards censorship and moderation. Look at the scale here. For those of you watching at conduitnews.com or our other platforms, create unmediated marketplace of ideas up here, and now that's descended. You see Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Google create well-ordered spaces for safety and civility, politicized editor, publisher. That's right. Google now thinks of itself not as a search engine, but as a publisher, and a publisher has, you got to get past the censors, right? You got to get past the censors. The first approach is described as a product of the American tradition, which prioritizes free speech for democracy, not civility. The second is described as a product of the European tradition, which favors dignity over liberty and civility over freedom. That is an exact quote from the document, by the way. Quote, favors dignity over liberty and civility over freedom. End quote. That's what they describe as the European tradition. The briefing goes on to claim that all tech platforms are now moving toward this European tradition. Again, that, quote, favors dignity over liberty and civility over freedom. You know, the ones who are saying Hillary Clinton came out and said that if the Democrats take back the House, they will bring dignity and civility. She said something along these lines: dignity and civility back to America. These people are frauds. These people put up these fronts like they're the dignified ones and they're the civilized ones, and yet they are the ones, ladies and gentlemen, that want to exploit groups of people in America against each other to gain political power. They're the ones that continue to point out our differences. They're the ones, the ones that care about, we've got to believe or we've got to stand up for women's rights, but not if the woman is in the womb. Not if it's a baby girl in the womb of her mother. Then you don't have rights yet. I'm sorry, you're not out of the womb yet, so you don't have rights. But we need civility, and yet we have allowed this barbarism to go on, and that's just one of the hypocrisies. The briefing associates Google's new role as the grantor of civility. Guarantor of civility, is that how you say that? Of civility with the categories of editor and publisher. This is significant, even given that Google, YouTube, and other tech giants publicly claim they are not publishers, but rather neutral platforms. A categorization that grants them special legal immunities under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Elsewhere in the document, Google admits that Section 230 was designed to ensure they can remain neutral platforms for free expression. They also say that Donald Trump is a conspiracy theorist in this 89-page document. One of the reasons Google identifies for allegedly widespread public disillusionment with internet free speech is that it breeds conspiracy theories. The example Google uses: a 2016 tweet from then-candidate Donald Trump alleging that Google search suppressed negative results about Hillary Clinton. Okay, so it's a conspiracy theory, right? At the time, Google said that it suppressed negative autocomplete suggestions about everybody, not just Clinton. But it was comparatively easy to find such autocomplete results when searching for Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. And independent research from psychologist Dr. Robert Epstein also shows that Google search results, if not autocomplete results, did indeed favor Clinton in 2016. So it wasn't a conspiracy then, was it? Twice in the document, Google juxtaposes a factoid about Russian interference in American elections with pictures of Donald Trump. At one point, the document admits that tech platforms are changing their policies to preempt congressional action on foreign interference. The document did not address the fact that, according to leading psychologists, the impact of foreign bots and propaganda on social media has a negligible impact on voters. It is unclear for whom the good censor was intended. What is clear, however, is that Google spent or paid someone to spend significant time and effort to produce it. The report is the result of several layers of research. You see that slide right there. Look at that. Reporting, thematic analysis. According to the briefing, Breitbart News goes on, it was the product of an extensive process involving several layers of research, including expert interviews with MIT Tech Review editor-in-chief Jason Ponton, Atlantic staff writer Franklin Foer, and academic Kalev Litaru. 35 cultural observers, 7 cultural leaders from 7 countries on 5 continents were also consulted to produce it. What is also clear is that many of the briefing's recommendations are now reflected in the policy of Google and its sibling companies. For example, the briefing argues that tech companies will have to consider their platforms if they want to expand globally. Google is now constructing a censored search engine to gain access to the Chinese market. The document also bemoans that the internet allows have-a-go commenters, in other words, ordinary people, to compete on a level playing field with authoritative sources. Now, that is a quote. Have-a-go commenters or authoritative sources like the New York Times. Google-owned YouTube now promotes so-called authoritative sources in its algorithm. The company did not specifically name which sources it would promote. So they are upset that the average person can put together a comment with a bunch of truth in it that undermines what the propaganda. This is now total propaganda, essentially. Key points in the briefing can be found at the following page numbers. You see that there. You guys need to read this today. If you read anything else, this is the real deal. This is a big deal. This is everything we've been saying, and it's all, you know. Hey, listen, if you're conservative minded and you surf the internet and you're a news hound, then you already know this. You've experienced this. You can tell what's going on. But this is just confirming what a lot of you out there have already experienced on Twitter, shadow banning, things like that. Again, an 89-page leaked document from inside Google to Breitbart News entitled "The Good Censor," where they are weighing basically a European model versus an American model, and they're so upset that they've lost the election. They said that originally Silicon Valley was all about the American tradition, which prioritizes free speech for democracy, not civility. But they've now moved to a European tradition which, quote, favors dignity over liberty and civility over freedom. That is some diabolical wording right there. We're going to take a break. This is Conduit News Radio, the number 870-275-9799. Back in just a moment. He is a patriot, and his name is Hunter Rivet. Hunter, welcome back to the program, sir.
Good morning, Paul. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Hunter, tell us a little bit about, first of all, I understand that this semester you're an intern, interning with Conduit for Commerce. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm having a great time. A little while ago in the summer, Josh and Brenda met with me and asked if I'd like to get on board and help out with the various oiling and the tuning of the Great Liberty machine. And I have been doing that right now. I'm looking into reports on bonds and taxation issues in the state, which you have spoke at length about, which are really absolutely, it's just mesmerizing how Arkansas likes to spend money and get in debt.
So you are, okay, so you said you're doing some research on bonds. So, I mean, that's not exactly
money, power, prestige, essence, available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism. the aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Communist. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. There's all if you go and you look at the national news, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. We've got Nikki Haley submitting her resignation. You have a border wall build. Kevin McCarthy is it's going to be a border fight. They're going to make this a referendum on the midterm elections are going to be a referendum on illegal immigration. We'll talk to Maria Espinoza more about that as well, coming up at 7:33 from the Remembrance Project. But I can't tell you enough. This document from Google called The Good Censor is huge. And if you go to Breitbart.com, it's literally the first 5, 6, 7 articles are different articles about what is Intel. They've got the general article. Then they've got this headline, The Good Censor, Google document admits Breitbart News is #1 for free speech. That's pretty fascinating. You say, did they really admit that? Yeah. Yeah, they did. They have a graph and everything. And NBC News is dead last for freedom of thought. The Good Censor, Google briefing admits censorship makes it akin to a publisher. That is a huge story, again, because of if they're not a publisher, they get certain protection under the law. They are now at this point, and I am not a regulation guy. You know, I am not for more government regulation, but they at this point are begging to be broken up as a monopoly. And they just are. I mean, it says right here, the Good Censor 85-page summary. I said 89-page earlier. Want to be accurate. 85-page leaked to Breitbart News from inside Google. The company admits that the role of the censor is associated with the role of a publisher, a category that arguably should open tech platforms up to immense legal risk. The briefing was the product of extensive research responding to the leak. Again, Google said the document should be considered internal research and not an official company position. But the briefing admits the tech platforms, including Google, Facebook, and Twitter, underwent a shift towards censorship over the past few years. You know why? Because they're losing. Because they're losers. And they really are betraying the very people that made them filthy rich. You and me. Flyover country, you know? The ones that we don't know anything. You know, we need Google to tell us how to live our lives better, than we know how to live them ourselves. I mean, does it sound like a very explosive or, does it sound like a very interesting topic? But, it's one of the ways, I think, that government actually kind of uses covert debt, in order to maybe get things that they want that they can't really afford. What are your thoughts on that?
Paul, you're exactly right. And unfortunately, bonds, it's not a sexy issue. It's not like free speech or the Second Amendment. It doesn't get people riled up. But arguably, it's one of the most important because you're exactly right. Government will put debt upon the taxpayers And we're talking millions of dollars just this last year. If you include Benton and Washington County together, over $1 billion in new debt to finance sidewalks, dog parks, new fire station helmets, all sorts of things. And voters happily support it. In the last Springdale bond issue, it passed over 85% of the vote with less than 10% reporting. So those who do vote are happy to vote for it. Now, whether they know what they're voting for or not, I have yet to figure this out in my research. But if you put on the ballot tax increase or even millage, those have higher probabilities of failing as opposed to bonds, which usually cost more and are more nefarious ways to get people to pay money for the government's wants.
That's that is fascinating, what you just said there. So you have people who don't like tax increases, they don't like millage increases, which are tax increases, but they will vote for bonds. Big government types know this. So I guess then the educational effort should be to try to connect the dots between a bond and a tax increase. Now, I've said on the program before, Hunter, that when you take out these bonds and you do this irresponsible debt, that it is a future tax increase, and a lot of times, because when you can't pay your debt, they're going to come back to the citizens, and then they really will ask for that tax increase. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're exactly right. Let's take, for instance, let's cover all parts of your question. The first is some of the greatest bond issuing and indebtedness has happened at the hands of our great Republican supermajority. Take, for instance, the bonds that were issued to Big River Steel and other companies like Lockheed Martin and Chinadelphia. In the House, the bond issuing for Big River Steel passed 98-0.
Wow.
More.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. Hey, the Patriots of Act 746 are on a mission to educate Arkansans about not only your Second Amendment rights, but about your Arkansas rights, your natural right of human defense to protect yourself, your family, your property. And that's what they do. They talk about, Arkansas is a constitutional carry state. Do you know this? According to the law, we are a constitutional carry state. You can carry a gun, open or concealed, without a permit. That is so unnerving to the authorities, and we still have some authorities that refuse to recognize it. But through grassroots activism, and through talking with local law enforcement, now we still don't really have. The Arkansas State Police, they're not, they know that this is the case, but then again, they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? We're going to, if we really acknowledge this, we're going to lose all of our money for people that are going to get the permission slip, pay the government money, get your fingerprints, get your background check, and then they send you a little card that says you can conceal carry. And, that's a lot of revenue for the Arkansas State Police. So they haven't really gotten on board yet, to say the least. But there are sheriffs, there are prosecutors that drop the gun charges, and of course Patriots of Act 746, or let's say Act 746 is now 6-0 when it comes to people attempting to bring some sort of action of the possession of a firearm. In order for you to be found guilty in the state of Arkansas of possession of a weapon, the prosecution, the government, has to prove that you were going to attempt to unlawfully employ it against another person. Well, it being on your hip, open or concealed, is not you attempting to do anything. You're just carrying it on your person. And so the possession of firearms in the state of Arkansas has been decriminalized, and the burden of proof on the state has been increased to a level of almost like you're going to have to have some sort of extra cognitive ability to see what's on your mind while you're carrying the gun. And the government, as of yet, as much as they'd like to, they don't have that technology. Well, at least they don't have the technology that I don't know. I mean, who knows? There's all these people who say, what does the government have behind closed doors? Well, it's not in the public domain. Let's just say that. Hey, welcome to the program to talk more about the Patriots. VEX 746. We have back with us Mr. John Calvin Martin. John Calvin, thanks so much for being with us, sir.
Oh, thank you, Paul, for having me back on.
Yeah, so how have things been going? What's going on down there in South Arkansas?
Man, I'm telling you, we are so excited about the efforts that we're putting forth, the things that are getting done. It is a slow and a long process, but, man, we are seeing some great and encouraging things happening with our people and across the state, actually. We're doing all kinds of new meetings, and you covered it a week or so ago, the Kilt Walk in Fayetteville, open carry Kilt Walk, which I'm going to be honest with you, I just get hysterical every time I think about that. That is so awesome that we have the right to not only open carry, but to promote the heritage behind the kilts. And, again, I don't know that I could wear one. That's not my heritage.
Well, you'd be appropriating somebody else's culture. The left would have a meltdown. You can't appropriate culture.
Absolutely. I got in a discussion about that, because somebody on our page, on our main page, said, "Well, I just don't believe that's what POA 746 is about." Well, I believe it is, because it's about our heritage and our rights. And I told that guy, I said, it'd be the same difference with me walking down the street, open carrying with a rebel flag.
Yeah,
I'm from the South. That's my heritage, And so, even though that stirs some things up in another aspect, of course, but man, we're having such a great time. It is awesome. I'm loving traveling across the state, meeting new people, and Paul, I'm just blown away that people really have bought into the narrative that the government knows best for us, and they are our friends, and they take care of us, and we should always obey what they say, even if it contradicts the laws. And I grew up that way, a good person is someone who never questions. Well, that's just not the American way.
That's true.
We were founded on people that were just tired of being bullied and being ruled by tyrants. And I want to be careful there, because I don't ever want to give the impression that we're a bunch of lunatics running around wanting to shoot somebody. That's just not what POA 746 is about at all. We're pastors, we're business owners, we're farmers, we're people that just love our country and love our rights. Mm-hmm. And, man, we're traveling across the state and having meetings. And down here in southeast Arkansas, it's a little harder because of the mindset, But we're definitely educating people and talking to people. We've got we had a meeting in Warren, Arkansas, just a few weeks ago, and decided to do an open carry walk, mm-hmm. because some of the officials. Let me rephrase that. We had heard that some of the officials said, "Well, there won't be no guns carried around here." Well, that's just not what was said. Senator Linda Collins Smith came down, visited with some of the officers, the Leos there in town, and everything just was awesome. They even took pictures together. I mean, it was just amazing, an amazing time.
Good for her, Good for her using her platform to say, "Hey, this is credible. This is what the law says."
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you said the mindset, though. You said because of the mindset down here. What is that mindset? Is it the mindset that we find on the radical left that say that guns kill people? It's not the evil heart of man that is acting to kill somebody.
Yes, I'm afraid that there's a whole generation that has grown up. When I was in high school, it was very hard to find a pickup in the parking lot of the high school that didn't have a shotgun or a .22 in the rack in the back window, because we would go hunting, either on the way to school or after school. But that's not the generation we live in now, and because of social media and movies and all the nonsense, guns have been portrayed as evil, and only evil people have them. And, boy, that couldn't be further from the truth, Paul. And, of course, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but, if we're not careful, what we do is we any rights that we have that are regulated are soon to be taken away from us. And and it's almost paradoxical, but one of the greatest sayings that's ever been said was that only way to stop a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. And it has nothing to do with the tool. And as I think me and you spoke one other time, the first mass killing in the Old Testament was in Genesis, and it was with a rock. Cain killed Abel with a rock, and a fourth of the population was taken out. Mm-hmm. So it had nothing to do with the tool. There are just as many people that could be killed with a knife or a box cutter. Well, what are we going to do? We can't start regulating the box cutter.
Yeah. Well, and the other okay. So the reason the left is against this idea of, arming, people having the right to bear arms or people having semi-automatic weapons is because of public safety. I mean, that's what they say, right?
Yeah, now, that's what they say.
Now, that's what they say. Now, I can take their argument and I can just show them the footage of the Salt Bowl false alarm with all of the people running for cover unarmed, and that's how the government actually sees us. They see us as sheep. I saw a meme the other day on Twitter, and it was a bunch of sheep, and it was looking straight at the camera lens, and it was like, after Kavanaugh, we're just waiting for what to be outraged at next. Basically, they're waiting on the media to tell them. This is what it said. Anyway, that the government sees us as these sheep, and they would rather have you cowering in War Memorial Stadium or running for your life or taking, like that father did, just like, here we go, sweetie, takes his girl by the hand and just starts to try to get towards the exit because they think there's a shooting going on. That's how the government would rather you be than be able to have a gun to protect yourself out in public. And that is radically offensive to me. But that aside, John Calvin, what I would like to talk about as far as guns go is the reason why our founding fathers, the main reason was because they had just defeated the most powerful military force in the world at the time, the Redcoats, Great Britain, who were oppressive, who didn't want them to have guns. And they understood that they were this close, that the American government was this close. The newly formed American government could flip in an instant. It could flip in a day, and they would need to secure their liberties again because they understood that a government, that a powerful government can suppress the people. And, when you say that today, and I think that's the main argument, but when you say that today, people have so much faith and confidence. Oh, America would never do that because America never has done that, which is not necessarily true if you look through our history. But yeah, talk about that. That's the main reason why our right to human defense is so important.
Well, and again, Paul, I think, and this is a much deeper discussion, that through our educational system, we have been duped into believing that, again, our government is for us, and they know what's best for us. Ronald Reagan, I real regularly go to his statement of when we feel like a far and distant government can rule our lives better and know what's better for us than we do, then we're a nation that's already in trouble. And I believe that with all my heart. Because nobody knows how to protect my family better than I do. Back to your statement, I'm afraid that we have been indoctrinized to believe that the government, that the welfare system, these things are made to take care of us to the point until we have literally became, as you said earlier, sheep. My problem with that is that if you read history and you study history, then you understand there was most definitely a time in our history, as far as America, that people had to stand up. I've seen that on Facebook, I'm sure you have too, the little meme that says, by this, if our forefathers had been here today, they would already be shooting. And that's literally the reason we have become where we are now, because somebody stood up and said, hey, enough is enough. We can't take anymore. Again, I don't want to make that sound radical, because what POA 746 is about. We're not radicals. And I've said this to you before. It's not about trying to overthrow the government. It's trying to make sure the government doesn't overthrow us. And you know, as far as assault weapons, and that's a real crazy term anyway, assault weapons. But when America was founded, the American patriots had the same kind of equipment, same kind of military weapons that the government did. And I think that's always the way it should be. You know, I had somebody ask me the other day, what about these AR-15s? I mean, who hunts with the AR-15? Well, you know, I've got a lot of friends that do that.
Me too. I have one that hunts with one.
Oh, absolutely. I've got several friends that do, and they're good for that. But you know, when we founded, when America was founded, they didn't worry. They weren't worried about the deer uprising. I mean, you know, they weren't worried about the wild animals.
Are you sure they weren't worried about the deer uprising? I mean, come on, they're trespassers. They're on your land. You know, they
and they have horns.
They've got horns. They eat your resources, and then they you know, they defecate all through your woods. That's your property.
Absolutely.
They weren't worried about an uprising of deer then.
Right, exactly. They were, you know, and in particular, even to this day, we should be able to defend ourselves against anybody or any tyrannical people or any tyrannical government that tries to take away our rights. And again, not trying to be radical, that has nothing to do with it, but it is my God-given right to be able to defend myself, defend my property, and defend my family. And if we're not careful, what we do is we literally, we're our own worst enemies at times because we want to trust people that can't be trusted. And that's just a simple, you know, simple fact of it. If there was no worries about somebody breaking in my house, well, then I would not need a gun. But as we've seen since Genesis, that human nature, that Adamic nature, is always going to be to have to worry about other people.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think we should have to walk around in fear. But you know what? I had a guy ask me. I carry all the time, and everywhere I go. And a guy asked me. He said, "Well, what are you scared of?" And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, not much, because I carry."
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Hey, John Calvin Martin, appreciate it with the Patriots of X 746. It's always great to talk to you, sir, and we will do this again soon.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you and everything y'all are doing, brother.
All righty. Appreciate you, John Calvin Martin. All righty, folks, we're going to take a break here. Going to reset the number to call or text, 870-275-9799. Also over at facebook.com/Conduit News. Back in a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Fight was put up in the Senate, but Republicans are happy to issue millions, we're talking billions, in future tax increases but no one wants to raise a hand. No one wants to say anything. And this is definitely what it is. And I think one of the lure with bonds is, oh, well, we're not paying for it right now. We'll wait 10 years. Okay, but with interest and everything, that's going to be a more substantial burden upon the taxpayer. And it always comes out in usually, 1 to 2% increase in sales tax, an increase in property taxes or millage. The government money does not grow from trees. And if they want to grow government, we, the people, are going to have to pay for it.
Didn't we default on a bunch of bonds back in the 30s? And basically the state of Arkansas went bankrupt?
Yes, during the Great Depression, Arkansas, and it's funny, you'll hear economists say, oh, during the Great Depression, we needed to raise taxes. We needed to have more.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, the telephone number again, 870-275-9799. The Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette with an opinion piece back on the 5th against Issue 4. Where's Bill Halter when you don't need him? Bill Halter, of course, was the Democrat lieutenant governor who used his bully pulpit to drum up support for the Arkansas Scholarship Lottery that was going to solve all of our financial problems, and of course that's not been the case. Listen to this piece. It's a very, very good opinion here. If lotteries are the voluntary taxes on the poor and ignorant, what are casinos? The crack houses? Last we heard, the casinos law called Issue 4 on your ballot was still in the courts. Whether the state will be able to count votes the night of November 6th is up to a judge or two. Better safe than sorry, though. It's going to be on your ballot, Mr. and Mrs. Arkansan, so vote against it. Why do Arkansans need casinos in our lives? Answer, we don't. Have you been south of the state border lately? Have casinos and riverboats done much for Louisiana highways? Have casinos and riverboats cleaned up Mississippi's roads or its corruption? Now, I will say, I think Mississippi's got they've got better roads than us. You don't think so, Joe? All right, well, let me just say that I think that the interstate is certainly better. I mean, I-55 south all the way down to Hattiesburg is much better than the interstates in Arkansas. I mean, at least on the eastern side of this. The eastern side of interstates of Arkansas are horrible.
Oh yeah, no, eastern side of the state's awful. Like if you are coming from Alabama for the most part into like central Mississippi, your drive is going to be awful.
Yeah, Joe's from Mississippi. Yeah. Yeah, how's it feel like? What is it? Is it like? What do you think? You think going from Mississippi to Arkansas is like just kind of a lateral move? It's like it's really just one state. This opinion piece goes on. Issue 4 would allow the State Racing Commission to issue casino licenses to applicants from West Memphis to Pine Bluff to Hot Springs. It seems that only yesterday we were screaming bloody murder, or at least bloody theft, about the lottery. Remember how that legal numbers racket was going to solve all of Arkansas's financial woes? Now there's a separate line at many filling stations just for people to scratch their lives away, and the rent. Northwest Arkansas goes on, the Democrat Gazette. Now those pushing more gambling want to double down, as in blackjack, to take more disposable income away from restaurants and movie theaters and water parks. Also, those lucky few with their licenses can make it rich. And rich they will become. They don't build casinos with the money won by gamblers at their tables. But in this state, the people rule. It's the state motto. And voters can't take anything for granted. Remember when passing a medical marijuana law was all but impossible in this generally conservative state? If a body really wanted to know who'd benefit from casinos in Arkansas. He'd only have to look at who's putting money behind them. Hint, it ain't the unemployed guy down the street looking for a dealing gig. Last reports in this paper showed the committee in charge of casino lobby reported a total of $2.48 million in contributions. The Quapaw tribe in Oklahoma donated $1.4 million, and the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma gave $1.05 million. They will want a return on that investment. If Issue 4 passes, do you think they'll get it? In a word, yes. In 2 words, yes, indeed. For the House always gets its first cut. And, of course, there'll have to be government oversight of an expanded gambling empire in the natural state. More state workers to watch the casinos, more state workers to audit the casinos, more state workers to promote the casinos. If the House gets its first cut, then the state House and Senate will get theirs too. Because let me stop there. Because now you'll have more special interests that will give to political campaigns, to give our politicians more money. If we the people allow it, this is what's going to happen. Remember, when the lottery was first introduced in this state, a man by the name of Big Ernie Pasaligu, I'm sorry, Pasaligu, was made executive director of the just a boarding lottery, and he was paid $324,000 a year to midwife it. Wow, I love some of these verbs here. To midwife it. Talk about hitting the jackpot. Who will get in on the action besides the Oklahoma tribes? Let's not find out. Instead, let's just vote against Issue 4 next month. Voters should take it out of the hands of a few judges and out of the hands of would-be pit bosses. Again, a fascinating editorial, really surprising, really good from the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. I was talking to a guy the other day. He said he didn't care one way or the other. I'm just going to be honest. I was talking to a friend the other day. He was like, I don't really care about casinos. If it passes or if it fails, my life's not going to change one bit because I don't go to casinos. I don't go to Oklahoma casinos. I don't go to Tunica over in Mississippi. Yeah, that's another great point. Look at Tunica. I don't know. I think it'll probably pass, though. That's just my bet. I think it'll pass. I think just like I think the minimum wage is going to pass because people look at the ballot and they'll say, yeah, I want more money, and they don't know that it's actually going to hurt small business and therefore hurt the idea of getting a job. $11 an hour minimum wage when we're at $8.50 right now. Give me a break. So I think most people are going to vote for that because of the lack of, Thomas Jefferson said an educated citizenry is indispensable to the proper functioning of a republic. And so, but when it comes to casinos, I don't know if people see the harm in basically government-sanctioned vice, government-regulated vice. Man, can you imagine? You ever hear of the Nevada? I'm sorry, they pronounce it Nevada up there. You ever hear of the Nevada Gaming Commission? My goodness. The medical marijuana licensing process is about as corrupt as they come. Can you imagine what's going to happen? Let me tell you something right now. The casino industry, the casino market or whatever, they're going to fit in great here in Arkansas because Republicans have done so little to clean up the corruption of the Democrats for 138 years. There hasn't been much policy change. It's just been, we switched. We took off the blue T-shirt, and now we're wearing the red T-shirts. We've got one more hour coming your way next.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk, 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Fight was put up in the Senate. But Republicans are happy to issue millions, we're talking billions, in future tax increases. But no one wants to raise a hand. No one wants to say anything. And this is definitely what it is. And I think the lure with bonds is, we're not paying for it right now. We'll wait 10 years. Okay, but with interest and everything, that's going to be a more substantial burden upon the taxpayer. And it always comes out in usually, 1 to 2% increase in sales tax, an increase in property taxes or millage. The government money does not grow from trees. And if they want to grow government, we, the people, are going to have to pay for it.
Didn't we default on a bunch of bonds back in the 30s? And basically the state of Arkansas went bankrupt.
Yes, during the Great Depression, Arkansas, and it's funny, you'll hear economists say, during the Great Depression, we needed to raise taxes, we needed to have more government spending. Arkansas was one of those states that tried to do a socialist model. During the late 20s and the early 30s, Arkansas taxed at some of its highest rates and spent at some of its highest rates compared to earlier. This was a complete failure. They defaulted on many. They had to get bailed out by the federal government, which is still, people's taxpayer dollars. And business would choose not to come to the state for 30, 40 years afterwards because it was not a good economic environment. If the government is defaulting on this, why would we want to start a business here? This is one of the biggest problems with African nations, is that they have such corrupt and mismanaged governments that businesses won't start there. And it's unfortunate that we have to compare Arkansas to a third world country, but the way that our government is spending and taxing us, it's comparable, unfortunately.
Wow. And it just kind of dawned on me, the situation with that default in the 30s, if you're saying that then businesses didn't want to locate here because things were so bad, I mean, we wonder why. Some people ask the question, how did Arkansas's government get so big and so corrupt, and yet the states around us that really essentially have the same, in a lot of ways, the same, geographic location generally, but they're so much wealthier than us, Hunter.
Yes.
So it may be because of, just mismanagement and what happened in the 30s we're still recovering from.
We are still recovering from it. As far as geography goes, I understand, Paul, you are a scholar because you like to talk about geography, and which is really the key for some place to grow economically. I would argue, other than perhaps Missouri and Louisiana, Arkansas is uniquely blessed and gifted with its geographical location. It really has a middleman as far as eastern-western traffic goes with the Arkansas River, with the interstate. We have great people here who like to work, who are willing to work, but for some reason, our government continues to do us dirty, and whether it be through mismanaged loans, extravagant taxes, government spending, businesses will not come here, and other states are better business environments. We see it in multiple reports on how business-friendly Arkansas is a state, and it's never above 40. It's always in the bottom rung. I wish we could fix that, but I don't think our current administration, it's funny, I don't think our supermajorities of our great conservative Republicans are going to fix that anytime soon.
Yeah, well, they'll tell you, well, it just, it takes a long time. It takes a long time to turn this aircraft carrier around. Well, tell that to President Donald Trump. I mean, here's a guy who has made really sharp turns, and he's done it faster than I thought he would. He's done it faster than even his supporters thought he would. What he has accomplished, I mean, he has shown what a leader can do, whether it's the North Korea situation, whether it, and I know that's not resolved yet, but whether it's the North Korea situation, whether it's moving the embassy in Jerusalem, the tax, cuts, even the Supreme Court justices. I mean, 2 Supreme Court justices, and it could be 3, it could be 4, and it's amazing what somebody who's actually committed to getting an agenda done for the folks, how fast it can happen, but you got to be willing to take the hits. I don't think we have enough folks who are willing.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It is hour number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. The telephone number 870-275-9799 as we are building a liberty machine right here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We appreciate you being with us today. Hey, at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with the Remembrance Project's Maria Espinoza. She's back on the program. We're going to be talking about what Chris Kobach of Kansas said. Is it Kobach or Kobach? Chris Kobach, I think. Chris Kobach of Kansas, Secretary of State there who's running for the governor of Kansas, at a rally with Donald Trump last week in Topeka, Kansas, made a link between the terrorists of 9/11 who came here legally in our immigration policy but then overstayed their visas and nobody did a thing about it. It was fascinating. Also, you have this story where you have another illegal alien, I believe, has been charged with rape. The Remembrance Project is about remembering those who have been killed by illegal immigrants. That if we had different immigration policies, these are preventable deaths is the argument. So we'll be talking with her about that, as well as I'm sure the immigration policy. I mean, this midterm election now is now about immigration policy. Have you heard about this? You got Kevin McCarthy, the majority leader, putting forth a border wall funding bill. And so now there's going to be a rigorous debate over this. And, hey, do you want the full wall? I mean, I know they're building it now, but we're going to give the president full funding on this. And now, I mean, I'm telling you, the wind is at the back of the Republican Party at this point. After coming after this Kavanaugh victory, after the left just absolutely descending into these mob-like tactics, as well as these, accusations where you're just going to be guilty until proven innocent. And listen, when you have a moderate like Susan Collins, and you have a moderate like Lindsey Graham that feel they have the support of the president, they know the president, is basically shields them from the mainstream media and all of their lies. But when they see the tactics of the left and are able to stand up to them, then the left has gone pretty far. The left has really gone off the rails here, and that's why Republican enthusiasm right now is so high, because people are really wanting to send a message. You had President Trump actually that said, according to this article, I think a lot of Democrats are going to vote Republican in 2018. That's what I am hearing as well, by the way. Okay, but let's start here. Let's go over to this brand new piece. Have you guys heard that the governor? I know you've heard this. The governor Asa Hutchinson. He is back when he was in the midst of a primary with Jan Morgan, he came out and he said that he was going to shrink the size of government by reorganizing it from 42 agencies down to 15. Now, I'm sorry, no, I misspoke. Not 42 agencies, but 42 heads, meaning 42 people down to 15 people that directly answer to him and govern and manage all these agencies. Now, he says he's going to do this without reducing any jobs, meaning government jobs. And so I said last week in passing, I said, it certainly is a worthwhile goal. I mean, I'm all about measurably reducing the size and scope of government. You folks know that. But to me, if you're not going to shrink the amount of people who work for the government, but you're just going to basically go from 42 people that the governor has to talk to 15, but you're not getting rid of any of the 42, well, that seems like that's going to be a lot harder to manage if you're not actually getting rid of some of the responsibility of what government's doing right now. So Mr. David Ferguson over at conduitforaction.org has this new article out. David Ferguson is the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research. He would know state agencies probably like no other in the state right now because of his vast experience working for them for over 30 years. Governor Asa Hutchinson, he writes, announced his plan to reorganize state government. It will combine several state agencies so that the governor's cabinet will be reduced from 42 to 15 agency heads. Reorganization is a worthwhile effort, but it does not do, he writes, what many people think. What it is and what it is not. It is not about making state government smaller. It is about making state government more manageable, and that is a key point. Even the governor's Democratic opponent, Jared Henderson, sounds confused over what the proposal is about. Henderson called the reorganization a reshuffling, which it is, but then went on to say, quote, it's clear Governor Hutchinson is still stuck in the 40-year-old political debate of bigger government versus smaller to government rather than tackling our state's most critical problems, end quote. No, the proposal is not about smaller government. Henderson's statement is an inaccurate talking point intended to appeal to the left. Libertarian candidate Mark West correctly called the plan reshuffling, but unlike Henderson, he also correctly recognized the plan is not about smaller government. Mark West criticized the plan, saying, quote, Governor Hutchinson recognizes overlap and redundancy, but fails to really manifest them into sizable cuts. His big government allies aren't going to lose much sleep over his plan. Burn. Burn. Yes, David Ferguson writes, it's only a reshuffling, but the reshuffling should make it easier for a governor to manage executive agencies. Let's talk about cost savings. While Governor Hutchinson hopes there will be some efficiencies created by combining agencies, he is not pushing the reorganization as a measure to reduce government. The governor cited a dollar amount of savings projected by his Department of Finance and Administration. I won't cite the amount here because at this point it looks like speculation and wishful thinking. Even if the plan was final, I would be skeptical without specifics. If you're going to save money, it'll be from one of three ways: reduction in the size of state programs and grants, reduction in staff, or reduction in agency maintenance and operational costs. There's been no talk about reducing the size of state programs, other than a hope of finding some overlap in programs and then eliminating the overlap. Let's wait for specifics before assuming that will happen. Slashing state jobs is not in the plan of ASA. There will not be an immediate reduction in staff costs. The governor has said if state jobs can be eliminated, it will be done through not filling vacancies or attrition. That leaves maintenance and operation costs. To find a reduction there, you would have to assume the agencies here in Arkansas would need less space, or that reorganized and combined agencies would get purchasing discounts from having larger orders of supplies, etc. But the buying power of multiple agencies is already being used by having the Office of Purchasing negotiate state government-wide purchasing contracts for everything from pencils to automobiles. It's way too early to start claiming savings. Let's see the details. As a taxpayer, David Ferguson writes, I hope they can find some actual savings. By the way, the plan will have some additional expenses as another layer of management is created. The governor said the heads of the new agencies will probably be called secretaries, as is custom in federal agencies. This is a new layer of management. The head of the agricultural department is already called secretary, but most agency heads are called directors. I assume directors who do not get called up to the big leagues to be a secretary will keep their titles as directors. Expect them to also keep their pay. Also, there will be initial expenses for transitioning the agency to uniform systems and procedures. But David Ferguson goes on to ask, why bother? Reorganization is not a first step before reducing government. So you may be wondering, if it's not about reducing government, why bother? Reorganization provides the governor with better control and might produce better management of state government. With 42 state agency heads now being in the governor's cabinet, government is harder to manage than if a smaller cabinet was created. Who will oppose reorganization? I don't think many people will be concerned about the idea of reorganizing state agencies, but already there have been some concerns and criticisms concerning specific agencies in the plan. This is just part of the necessary discussions that must take place prior to approval by the legislature next year. The area where I had anticipated the most opposition was in putting medical-related licensing boards under one umbrella and agencies and business-related licensing boards under another. Currently, these boards are mostly independent of the governor, although the governor appoints board members. This may not be the big hurdle I anticipated. The governor's working to minimize the opposition by saying these boards will keep their rulemaking power and the fees they collect will stay within the licensing board. A shift in the balance of power from the boards to the governor is still likely. For example, it appears staff now employed by the boards will be under the supervision of the governor instead of under the boards. The reorganization plan is a work in progress. It appears the governor is already considering changes based on comments received about specific agencies. There have been some laughs over the name of one of the proposed super agencies, Transformation and Shared Services, which sounds like a long-winded way of saying miscellaneous agencies. With a few months to go before the legislature meets, perhaps a more descriptive name can be found, or perhaps the agencies will find other places to go. The governor's original announcement suggested a reduction in cabinet-level agencies from 46 to 20. The plan presented in October proposes 15 cabinet-level agencies. So even if the final proposal is not quite as ambitious as what has been proposed, the plan might still end up less than the original number of 20. A lot of work goes into a successful reorganization, and not every reorganization is successful. For example, Governor Mike Huckabee's effort to combine the Department of Human Services and the Department of Health ran into many obstacles because the procedures and systems of the two large agencies were very different. Once Governor Huckabee left office, Mike Beebe listened to agency frustrations and approved legislation to separate the agencies. The question is this: will there ever be an effort to reduce the size of government? Although the cost per person for Arkansas state government is high when compared to other states, there has been no effort by politicians to reduce the size of state government. Republicans have been the majority in the state legislature for 6 years, and we have had a Republican governor for 4 years, yet there has been no effort to restrain state government through such measures as performance-based budgeting. The budget process has not changed from the way it was done under the Democrats. It's still more about calculating the percentage budget increase for all state budgets, which means poor-performing agencies and low-priority agencies basically get the same budget increase as more needed agencies. The budget process then moves on to consider specific agency requests for even more money. David Ferguson says that reorganization is not something I can get excited about, but it is worthwhile effort to help the governors better manage executive branch agencies. I just wish, he writes, there was as much effort and hype about reviewing state programs and state grants for need and efficiency. Come to think of it, even a little effort in that arena would be nice. We're going to take a break, reset. Coming up next, folks, our carefully crafted language segment that we missed yesterday. Back in just a moment. Willing to take the hits and stand up to the media.
You're exactly right. Let's go back. Let's talk about our great president, Donald Trump. We know what Asa thinks about Donald Trump. During the campaign, he hit him hard. He said this is this is a Trump train, Trump show. We don't have leadership on par with President Donald Trump. Asa is subpar. This is quite clear. Now, imagine how Arkansas would do if it had an economic policy like that with Donald Trump. If it had a leadership policy like that of Donald Trump, Trump understood that you've got to cut regulations. We've got more regulation than any other industry. You've got to cut taxes, one of the greatest tax cuts in history. And you've got to have someone who's willing to negotiate. Trump, he talked that up a bunch in the media, as we're seeing now. They attacked him. Oh, what do you have, a magic wand, Well, I mean, quite literally, yes. Donald Trump is a business maker. He's calling people every day. He's making 300 phone calls a day. He's talking to business leaders. What can we do to get you here? Asa.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you. Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions. Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, number 870-275-9799. Okay, so yesterday, I told you we were going to do a carefully crafted language segment, but, I completely forgot about it. And so, anyway, the phrase, you guys know, carefully crafted language, who, Joe? It was coined by the governor himself, Asa Hutchinson. Listen to this. Okay, so, carefully crafted language. So, for this week's carefully crafted language segment, we are highlighting a brilliant, an absolutely brilliant and confusing piece of carefully crafted language by none other than the governor's nephew, Senator Jim Hendren. Back on September the 4th, it was reported by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette that John Woods, now in jail for the next 18 years, says that basically there was a potential bribe offer so that John Woods went to Jim Hendren, the governor's nephew, and said, hey, just in case we get put in the same district together when they reorganize the boundaries, if you don't want me to run against you, Jim, then you're going to need to pay me $10,000. Huh, okay, all right. It's a pretty big bombshell piece of news, right? So you would think that something would happen as a result of that. So the Gazette reported that Senator Hendren went to the authorities, I think a local prosecutor, and told this to the local prosecutor. And the local prosecutor then, I think, consulted with law enforcement, and law enforcement came back and said, well, we can't do anything about him asking for a bribe unless unless we had more evidence and that sort of thing. And the only way they're going to have that is if you have another conversation with him and you wear a wire. Okay. And then it was reported that Senator Jim Hendren didn't want to wear a wire and just wanted to run his race. Now, the reason this is such a bombshell is because later on, knowing all of this, Senator Jim Hendren supported John Woods over a true conservative for re-election because John Woods, now convicted felon John Woods, who's in jail for the next 18 years, was part of the good old boy system and club. And that really, really hurts Jim Hendren's credibility. And because of this story alone, by the way, Senator Hendren should step down as the president pro temp of the Senate incoming, because the ethics are so bad. It's so terrible at the Arkansas Senate that he needs to step down as president pro temp because he knew John Woods was such a bad guy and didn't cooperate with the FBI. He reported it, but then didn't cooperate with the FBI. And here's the carefully crafted language. Are you ready? He said this. Now, wrap your head around this. He said, quote, "They didn't ask me to wear a wire," said Hendren, a Republican from Sulphur Springs. "They asked me if I was willing to. I decided not to wear a wire and push it, but to run my race." What does he mean by push it? Well, I decided not to upset the status quo of the good old boy system and the criminal enterprise that is the Arkansas General Assembly for some. Let's read that again, shall we? Quote, "They didn't ask me to wear a wire," said Hendren, a Republican from Sulphur Springs. "They asked me if I was willing to." Isn't that strange? Doesn't make any sense. They didn't ask me to wear a wire. Meaning the FBI. The FBI didn't ask me to wear a wire. The FBI asked me if I was willing to. What in the world is that statement? What is going on? I mean, I've been told that the FBI never asks somebody outright to wear a wire. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, that's what I've been told. But that's kind of beside the point. That doesn't really matter here because the statement in of itself is contradictory. They didn't ask me to wear a wire. They asked me if I was willing to. I decided not to wear a wire and push it, but to run my race. Now, okay, so in the carefully crafted language context, why would Senator Hendren say, "They didn't ask me to wear a wire"? Because he's basically saying, well, they didn't ask me to wear a wire, so I didn't reject the FBI's request, because the FBI, they weren't interested. But then the very next sentence is, they asked me if I was willing to. So they did ask you. I don't know. Did the FBI ask him to wear a wire? Did they not? Regardless, we do know this. Jim Hendren decided not to wear a wire, not to push it, and to just go ahead and run his race. And then fast forward a few years later, and his uncle, the governor, along with him and the good old boy Marble Palace, Little Rock system, supported John Woods for re-election. Asa threw a fundraiser for him as a special guest, knowing that this guy was a scoundrel looking to make a buck off of his political clout and off of his position. Instead of serving the people of his district, John Woods only wanted to enrich himself and shake down the people of Arkansas or other politicians. That is your carefully crafted language segment for the week.
With President Donald Trump, Asa is subpar. This is quite clear. Now, imagine how Arkansas would do if they had an economic policy like that with Donald Trump. If it had a leadership policy like that of Donald Trump, Trump understood that you've got to cut regulation. We've got more regulation than any other industry. You've got to cut taxes, one of the greatest tax cuts in history. And you've got to have someone who's willing to negotiate. Trump, he talked that up a bunch in the media, as we're seeing now. They attacked him. Oh, what do you have, a magic wand, Well, I mean, quite literally, yes. Donald Trump is a business maker. He's calling people every day. He's making 300 phone calls a day. He's talking to business leaders. What can we do to get you here? Asa takes off his tie, sits down on his rear, and says, well, we have China, so we'll sell out to China. We'll get a couple paper companies. We'll get 10 jobs here or there. That's good enough for my people. He doesn't care. He's apathetic about his state. And, I mean, me and you have talked about this, and I think some other people in circles have talked about this. Asa is just using Arkansas as a stepping stool. I don't know if he truly cares about the economy, the business, the people of the state. Actions speak louder than words.
We're talking with Hunter Rivet. Now, Hunter, I want you to tell me about you're also a fellow with the Charles Koch Institute. What have you done with them so far this semester?
That's right. Well, that has just begun. We've been doing this for a month or just over a month. And right now we're just doing research and writing and more of a colloquium amongst us, just speaking about these libertarian ideas, speaking about these pro-business, pro-freedom ideas, which seem incredibly novel to someone like me and you, but that the greater population perhaps does not buy into. So we are reading some of the greats and writing and talking about Thomas Sowell, Frederick Bastiat, Charles Koch himself, some of these great libertarian thinkers who wanted business to succeed, wanted the American people to succeed, wanted true Americana, true patriotism.
With Frederick, you mentioned Frederick Bastiat, and I am particularly fond of his definition of legal plunder.
Yes.
And where he talks about how, the government is able basically to do things that if you and I were to do, it would be illegal. But they actually, they do things under the business can do it, the government can do things, and because they've got the guns and because it's the law, they're able to get by with a lot more than they should.
100%. I mean, what's the difference between
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up? It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. We're in the home stretch here. Thanks so much for being with us this morning, starting the beginning of your day with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Folks, she is the national director of the Remembrance Project. You can go to the remembranceproject.org and find out more about this. Welcome back to the program. We have Maria Espinoza. Maria, good morning to you.
Good morning, Paul. Thanks so much for having me on again.
Yes, absolutely. I want to talk about the events of the day, but first I want to give you a chance again to remind our listening audience what you're trying to accomplish with the Remembrance Project.
Well, we started in 2009 in Houston, Texas, and we are a voice for the victims who've been killed by illegal aliens, because those are 100% preventable killings and murders, and they are permanently separated from their loved ones, and we're trying to shine a big light on that. And President Donald Trump is doing a fantastic job for us. As you know, he embraced the Remembrance Project and our angel moms and dads and families, and he has been, listening to us ever since.
You are exactly right. He has done an amazing job of getting this out into the forefront. And I want to talk about, how this is going to affect the midterms, because we've got some new developing news that happened yesterday on that. But before we do, Maria, last week we had, Donald Trump. He goes to Kansas, Topeka, has these big rallies, and you have Chris Kobach, who's the Secretary of State there, who's running for governor. And he made some connections that a lot of people don't make about the September 11th terrorist attacks and immigration. Did you happen to observe this?
I did see most of that rally. We have events, seems like every other night, that are very important to attend. But yes, Chris Kobach actually has been a friend of ours we've known him for about 7 years now. He was our MC, Paul, at our first ever national conference for victims' families in Houston. He emceed that event, and Donald Trump was our keynote speaker there. So we know Chris very well, and you're absolutely correct. We have memorialized 2 of the families of the 9/11 victims, family members, and that was because they, came to us and we got to know them. But he's correct in that, 19 of those that entered with a visa, 5 of them had overstayed. 19 of the terrorists entered with a visa. And in my opinion, Paul, if they lied on that application for the purpose of coming here to the United States, then that negates the entire application. But 5 overstayed their visas, and 4 of those 5 were stopped for speeding while they were here, and when their visa had expired. And 3 of the 4 were the pilots of the terrorist attack. So a lot of horrific carnage, and all preventable if we had a strong immigration enforcement.
You're exactly right, and that's why I know this is right up your alley, and it's just amazing. When I was reading his comments, from that rally, I was like, oh, my goodness, that's exactly right. People want to say that immigration, is about, or immigration policy, or having a policy where the American people and our elected officials decide how people come here. And they say that, this is racist, this is based on, some sort of bigoted mentality. And it's like, no, it's not. This is about trying to protect folks from violence and bad actors, and also protect our economic freedom as well.
Absolutely. And Chris Kobach hit the nail on the head when he said that we need to stop weaponizing our immigration system, and that's exactly what's happening. During the previous administration, I was in a hearing in Texas where the president of the Border Patrol Union for the Laredo sector mentioned that, or testified that they were told from the higher ups, this is the Obama administration now, if there were 6 or fewer illegal aliens crossing across our border, to let them pass. And if they were carrying 40 or less drugs, to let them pass. This is outrageous, Paul. There's no enforcement. There was no in that previous administration, and now with President Trump, things are different. But think of all those people who had entered during Obama's entire presidency.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at a story right now. We're talking with Maria Espinoza from the Remembrance Project. I'm looking at a story right now from the Daily Caller where Henry Rogers writes that an illegal alien from El Salvador who was previously deported from the United States was charged with rape and a list of other charges after a woman in Long Island, New York, was attacked, beaten unconscious, and then was raped. Martinez Reyes, 24, was charged with rape, sexual assault, and other assault charges and ordered to be held without bail. Fox News reported Martinez Reyes allegedly followed his female target around until he felt like he could get away with raping her, according to police. Martinez Reyes originally entered the country illegally in 2010 before he was deported. However, he illegally entered the United States again in 2014, according to ABC7. Again, preventable crimes, and it is unbelievable that we just had this whole 2 weeks of Kavanaugh and this whole situation where the left postures about how much they care about women, and yet they would say, no, you're racist if you want to prevent this person from entering the country.
Exactly, and our baseline is this. We don't have to allow anyone into our country, Paul, and that's the baseline. Now, should our businesses here need additional workers, then that's fine. Let's screen them, extreme vet them, but also we need to get Americans off of the welfare system. Let's get these individuals back to work if they're able-bodied, and put them in, train them, put them in these positions, and we don't have to open up our borders. And look, we have a huge job in front of us right now, to vet the people who are already here. And of course, we're not for an amnesty, not even a DACA amnesty. those individuals are about 24, 25 years old, and all the way up to 37 years old now. And think of this, according to our 14th Amendment, if they've had children here in the United States, they're anchor babies.
Mm-hmm.
They're U.S. citizens. So this problem should have been resolved decades ago, but the Obama administration certainly exasperated that.
Yes. But now we have now we have the stakes are really being taken up a notch for the November midterms. I'd love to talk about that with you, Maria Espinoza, everybody. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy will introduce a bill this week that will fully fund President Donald Trump's planned wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, thereby setting the midterm elections up as a referendum on immigration policy, according to Breitbart News. What are your thoughts on this, Maria?
Long time coming. I'm not for Kevin McCarthy. I believe that Congressman Jim Jordan out of Ohio would do a better job, and I think Jim Jordan would actually see this through. But some of these establishment politicians are just talk, and obviously we have a majority in the House and the Senate, and they still could not get the funding for President Trump for the wall as he requested. So I think illegal immigration certainly is at the top of the list all across the United States.
Do you see a trend? I understand what you're saying about Kevin McCarthy. I am skeptical, okay. But then again, it's with the Kavanaugh situation, and you have these rhinos who are standing up now. I mean, Mitch McConnell, he didn't bow to the media's beat there. Lindsey Graham, Susan Collins, and I'm just wondering if they are now kind of leading because they've seen the example of President Trump. I mean, President Trump refuses in all these circumstances to dance to the traditional drum that the media and this forced altruism that they try to act like that there's some sort of superior moral force. The President Trump sees right through it. He refuses to dance to the beat that they want him to, and now all of a sudden, you have these Republicans who normally have been status quo. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to get take the heat from the media, and now they're kind of starting to stand up. I'm not saying that is what's happening with Kevin McCarthy. I'm just saying maybe that's the trend here.
Well, I think that President Trump certainly has given them a backbone, but Paul, how long will they be on good behavior like this when Daddy leaves the room? I hate to put it that way, but it just seems that they should have been doing this from day one when they were elected, and the reason they were elected, but instead they want to fill their campaign coffers with the blood money from these open borders groups while our children are filling America's coffins, Paul, and that's what we have to look at. I want someone in there like Jim Jordan who is proven, who is solid, who we don't have to worry about. When the wind blows, he might change his mind. But that's why Jim Jordan is my pick. But also, we do have to. It's up to us to continue placing pressure. But most importantly, turn out to vote this November, and come November 7th, the day after voting, the last day to vote, we need to be looking for our America First candidate. We need to be, hold the line with the more conservative group now, but we need to look within our own groups locally, identify those who are good candidates, and support them all the way through election. And should they be elected, that's what's going to change, because we're here in Washington, D.C. now, and I can see clearly that these individuals, these politicians, many of them will not do what's right because they want to be reelected and have those cush positions and be glorified. They're treated like royalty when they go to their district. So they're servants, and that's what they need to do.
We're talking with Maria Espinoza from the Remembrance Project. I just got one more question. You mentioned. And I really, really appreciate your skepticism here for the Republicans who have had a lot of time to do things and they haven't. You mentioned the campaign situation, so I imagine the campaign finance situation. I imagine you've looked at some of these reports. Hey, which Republicans are taking money from groups that want to keep the border open. And so, ideally you would want somebody who hasn't taken money from those groups to be in a position of power and authority.
Yeah, very true. And that's really sad, Paul. You think about what you just said. This is money that helps them with their reelections. And instead of going out and pounding the pavement, they want to take this easy route. And they get, more and more money. They sit back and they get farther and farther away from their constituents and from the Constitution and what this country is set out and how our government works, and that they do belong to the people, that they serve the people instead, and that they should be legislating for the benefit of our country and its citizens. Instead, they're legislating for promoting open borders and, basically selling out America. As you know, immigration covers just about every aspect of, education. We're talking about medical, obviously, public safety, tax dollars. How many billions of dollars? $135 billion is what illegal aliens cost our country, plus the remittances that are sent, where our money is sent out of the United States. So, there's so much that hinges on this immigration issue that we really have to take President Donald Trump's lead in placing America first, and that's why I think that he won. And I think that's why people see, you have half a million manufacturing jobs. He's got 4 million people off of welfare, where Obama increased it almost double. He wanted those voters. So, I think President Trump is giving the confidence back to the American people.
I completely agree. Maria Espinoza, folks, check them out. She's the National Director of the Remembrance Project. Go to theremembrancproject.org and find out about the great work they are doing, making sure we don't forget those who have been killed by illegal immigrants, which are preventable deaths. Maria, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You do the same. God bless you.
All righty. Yes, ma'am. Folks, we're going to take a break. This is Conduit News Radio. Going to reset here. Be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Highway robber in the government. After the highway robber steals from you, that's it. He's not coming back, and you have a chance to defend yourself from that highway robber But the government comes back every time, and you can't defend yourself from the government. So I would compare, just as Bestier did, to legal plunder. That's exactly what it is. And for some reason, we have people saying you must be stolen from. You must give the government your money for the greater good. This is not true. This, at least to the levels we have now. Can we have a debate about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm trying to see here. I wanted to look up a quote while I have you, with the legal plunder, but I don't think my computer's not working. But anyway, Hunter, it's been great to have you on. We're out of time. I really appreciate it. Intern with Conduit for Commerce, also fellow with the Koch Institute.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts,
it's always great to have you on.
bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst. How are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. Really appreciate Maria Espinoza coming on. We'll have that video up for you over at conduitnews.com. That's conduitnews.com. Let me just real quick read for you. For those of you that don't think illegal immigration is a big deal, this headline from Chris Kobach, the candidate for governor, Secretary of State over in Kansas, okay? Now, keep in mind, we're not talking about our Kansas. We're talking about regular Kansas. Plain Kansas. This is what he said at the Topeka, Kansas rally last week with President Donald Trump there. I was there during 9/11, and we all remember how the world changed. But let me tell you something that you may not know. All 19 hijackers came into this country legally with temporary visas. 5 of them became illegal, mostly by overstaying their visas. 4 of those 5 were stopped by state and local law enforcement for speeding violations. They were illegally in the country at the time, but the cops didn't know it. So they didn't make an arrest, even though they could have if they had had that information at their fingertips. Now, get this. 3 of those 4 illegal aliens that they could have arrested were pilots. So if they had made those arrests, they could have stopped 9/11 from happening. Those numbers have shaped my career, he went on. The gravity of that has never left me. I will not, and I know President Trump will not allow our immigration system to be used again as a weapon to harm the American people. Stopping illegal aliens is not just about jobs. It's not just about crime. It's about our nation's security, and that comes first. End quote. Again, Chris Kobach from Kansas. Now, does it make sense why Donald Trump, the first thing he did was ban travel from Middle Eastern countries like Yemen? Does that now make a little bit more sense when you read the facts about what led up to the most deadly terrorist attack on United States soil? Really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Doesn't it break? Don't the facts break down the mainstream media narrative that you're just a racist? No, that's not it at all. We don't want history to repeat itself. We don't want people to weaponize our immigration system and use it against us. Fascinating stuff. Hey, folks, we've had a really good show today, so it's going to be up again at conduitnews.com, kind of recapping. And this is something I cannot encourage you enough to go check out. Somebody inside Google has leaked a document to Breitbart News. It's an 85-page document called The Good Censor. Essentially what it says, it's an internal document that says because the leftist points of view of many in Silicon Valley at these tech giants, because they have been rejected, their ideas have been rejected, that they now must start to censor and control the internet. Now, they don't come out and say that overtly. Instead, they say terrifyingly totalitarian statements like this. This is reporting from Breitbart News. The first approach is described as a product of the American tradition, which prioritizes free speech for democracy, not civility. That's a direct quote. Prioritizes free speech for democracy, not civility. The second is described as a product of the European tradition, which favors, quote, favors dignity over liberty and civility over freedom. Yeah, that's right. The briefing argues that Google, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter are caught between two incompatible positions: the unmediated marketplace of ideas versus well-ordered spaces for safety and civility. And guess what they're doing? They admit that they have to go to the European model. They have to sacrifice freedom, liberty, the exchange of ideas for a well-ordered spaces for safety and civility. This is a document that Google denies shapes their policies. They say it's just an internal document, and but they put a ton of research into it. There's graphs, there's photos, folks. It may be the most totalitarian thing when it comes. I mean, it's the most anti-freedom of speech document. It may be the most anti-freedom of speech document in the 21st century, and these are coming from American companies. Their ideas are being rejected. They think that we're all stupid, so now they have to censor us. They title it The Good Censor. I said last hour, it sounds like an Ayn Rand novel or a George Orwell novel. This is scary. This is scary stuff. The one thing they did in this document was admit that Google's now a publisher, which means they've opened themselves up to potential regulation. If they're a publisher now, and they're writing paid documents like The Good Censor, we'll see. I don't know. What do you think? Think antitrust laws are going to come into play here? You think they're going to break up Google? Folks, we'll see you tomorrow. Arkansas, be safe.
The news